Right.
So, colleagues, I'm going to start the meeting if that's okay.
Great.
Is that okay?
Great.
Agreed.
Cool. Okay, so a warm welcome to councillors and members of the public viewing the proceedings. Just for your information, this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. Please remember to put your phones on silent. This meeting is chaired by the Mayor and hosted by the Town Clerk, who will admit people to the meeting. Before I commence the meeting, there are a few housekeeping items to note. This is a formal council virtual meeting and is held just as our actual meetings at Fairway Hall, using the agenda as distributed by the Town Clerk. Please respect the Office of Council and remember the required standards of courteous conduct and discussion are the same whether in remote or face-to-face meetings. As with our usual meetings, members of the public will be given the opportunity to speak during public participation once invited to do so by the chair. The clerk has the ability at the request of the chair to mute or remove anyone who causes a nuisance. I hope this will not be necessary. Please ensure you're on mute at all times when not speaking. As in our actual meetings, please ensure comments are made via the chair. Should councillors wish to speak, please raise your hand. If you do not catch my eye, please message me via the chat function. I will raise my hand in return to acknowledge that a request to speak has been made. Councillors and members of the public are advised that should you participate in this virtual meeting, this may be recorded and published. Meetings or parts of meetings from which the press and public are excluded may not be filmed or recorded. Voting will take place in the same manner as the last virtual town council meeting. The clerk will call each councillor by name in alphabetical order to vote. Councillors will cast their vote by stating clearly for, against or abstain. The town clerk will then announce the result. So we now move on to item 2 of the agenda, and that's the apologies. To receive any apologies for non-attendance at the time of agenda dispatch, there were none. I think everybody's here.
No, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Alpha Collins is declared apologies for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Declarations of interest. To receive declarations of interest from councillors on items on the agenda, receive written requests for dispensations for declarable interests, and grant any requests for dispensation as appropriate. Are there any declarations of interest?
No.
None?
No.
Item number 4 on the agenda, to approve and adopt the minutes of the full council meeting held on the 3rd of June 2020. Are we all agreed that we can adopt the minutes?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Item number 5 is the mayor report and report of outside bodies. So I'll give my report. Thankfully, coronavirus cases are well down and slowly we're getting used to the new normal. It's good to see Shenley Road open for business again and shoppers out and about. Without our custom, shops will be unviable and closed down. My message to residents is to keep calm and carry on shopping locally. It is regrettable that Debenhams have closed down, and I do hope the shopping park owners will find a suitable tenant to take over Debenhams' lease in the not too distant future. My work with Bournemouth charity Goods for Good has diminished as the NHS no longer requires the volumes of hand and face creams. COVID is now under much better control as scientists are much more knowledgeable about the virus. Therefore, Goods for Good are now focused on sending aid to Beirut and their traditional aid destinations, countries such as Moldova and Uganda, in addition to supporting various UK charities working with asylum seekers and other vulnerable groups. I'm still involved with Gratitude, who are desperate to find an alternative venue for their free daily food distribution. Should any member know of a potential venue, please do let me know. My thanks go to the trustees of Allen Manor for providing a hall free of charge during lockdown, and the many local volunteers who gave up their time to help Gratitude distribute free food. I was honoured to read the poem for peace at the Town War Memorial on VJ Day. The event was streamed live, so there was no need for members of the public to attend in contravention of government social distancing rules. My thanks go to George McGregor, Andrew Grady and Nick Mell for the contributions to the event, and of course the town's entertainment officer, Dan Salter, for organising the VJ Day event with input and assistance from Councillor Pat Strack. VJ Day also included the installation of a beautiful memorial bench by the Town Council, close to the War Memorial and opposite McDonald's. I urge members to spend a couple of minutes sitting on the bench whilst contemplating the sacrifice made by so many of our armed forces to ensure we continue to live in a land of freedom, democracy and liberty. In addition to the memorial bench, a silhouette of a British Tommy was installed by the War Memorial in Elstree Village. My thanks go to the Town Clerk, Hugh Jones, for organising these installations to commemorate the 75th anniversary of VE Day, VJ Day, and the end of World War II. Finally, I would like to thank the emergency services who have had a rough time dealing not only with Corona, but also with a couple of serious criminal incidents that took place in the town recently, which you may have read about in the local and national press. I would like to especially thank Hertfordshire Constabulary and the East of England Ambulance Service that had to deal with these incidents and wish the victims speedy recovery. I would also like to point out that Elstree and Boreham Wood is a very safe place to live with very low levels of crime. The likelihood of falling victim to a crime in our town is very low in comparison to other neighbouring areas. And that's the end of my report. Now we're going to move on to the outside bodies reports as follows. It is understood that many of these organisations may not have met since the last council meeting. And we'll start with Fairway Hall and Hugh Jones, the Town Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shall be very brief. Yesterday, a meeting of the in-house audit subcommittee took place, and one of the questions that the auditors asked was the impact, the financial impact of coronavirus on the services of Elstree and Boreham Wood Town Council, in particular with regard to lost income from Fairway Hall bookings between March and the middle of this month. It's estimated that roughly £20,000 of lost income is the figure that has been projected. And it's therefore suggested, as you'll see later in the agenda, that Fairway Hall will reopen on the 21st of this month. This allows time for the staff to be ready and back in post to facilitate that with the requisite social distancing rules and in due accordance of the coronavirus risk assessment that's been carried out and has been published by the Town Council for the reopening. In that time, the Town Council, through the General Management Committee, has agreed that it was prudent to resurface the floor of Fairway Hall whilst it was not in use by either casual or regular hirers. This was an activity which is nearing completion now and took 3 weeks. So it made sense to do it over this summer period and negates the need to close the hall at a later date. The floor had not been resurfaced ever in its lifetime. I believe it was installed in 1986 and had survived many years after its scheduled resurfacing dates. The cost of this activity was quite extensive. It was £14,700, and the General Management Committees suggested this be included with the capital projects earmarked reserves expenditure, which has already taken place this year in rejuvenating the hall. So the good news is that we're hopeful and keen to reopen the hall on the 21st of September for both casual and regular hire with the new restrictions. So for example, the yoga class, which would perhaps attract 30 attendees, may now only have something like 10 or 11 attendees at it, and face coverings will be required to come into the building. Once the participants are engaged in their activity, they won't be required to wear them, but they will sign up to our risk assessment requirements. And there ends my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Hugh. We move on to the Leeming.
Hang on, Mr. Mayor, I have raised my hand.
Sorry, I can't see. You haven't got your camera on. Sorry.
Yeah, and as I've already said, Simon, I'm not having my camera on because it does interfere with my Wi-Fi. I've already stated that clearly, and I don't need to keep repeating myself. I want to ask a question. I have raised my hand.
Okay. Could you mind, Councillor Butler, and before you speak, would you mind then trying to raise your hand via the chat function? So
that's what I have done, Simon.
It hasn't shown. No,
Yeah.
I can't see it.
It's clearly on my screen. I'm happy to take a screenshot of it and send it to everyone.
No problem. No, Councillor Butler, please, please do speak.
Okay, so basically my question is, if we're looking at rehiring the hall on that date after September, will we then be looking at also using it formally for council agenda meetings?
I'm happy to answer that question, Mr. Mayor. That's a matter for the council to decide. But as you know, the current guidance from the National Association of Local Councils is to continue with remote Zoom meetings or other platforms for the time being until otherwise notified to do so. That's the guidance we have received, but that is purely guidance. It's not a regulation. So it's up to members to decide that. I think it may be difficult, given the technology that we have at our disposal and the hardware we have at our disposal, to facilitate a full town council meeting downstairs in Fairway Hall. But what we might be able to do is to revert to using the council chamber at Hertsmere Borough Council offices. I've already made inquiries with Democratic Services at Hertsmere Borough Council to find out what the availability and cost of such an activity might be for us to do. But in the meantime, the advice, and I haven't heard otherwise, is to continue with Zoom meetings until advised not to do so.
So can I come back on that, please, Simon? Because my concern is, if we're asking members of the public to rent our facility out, what I don't get then is, if we've got 13 town councillors, let's say 2 officers, that's 15 members within that hall. So how many members of the public are we saying that can use our hall at one time, socially distanced and wearing face masks? Because to me, I just think it's a get-out clause, and I think we should be, as a council, now looking to come back. If we're renting our facility out, potentially putting members of the public in an unsafe environment, why should we not be looking at holding our council meetings in a socially distanced manner in face-to-face meetings? I will be pushing that for the council. Thank you.
I think part of the answer to that, through you, Mr. Mayor, is to do with the hardware requirements of the positioning and the length of cable between microphones, and positioning the space between members in such a way that it would be feasible. I mean, if that's something that can be done, then of course, as I said, it's up to councillors to decide whether they want to do that or not.
Well, we've had meetings in the past without microphones. I just can't see why that would be an issue. But I'm happy to listen to other members. But I think it's now time to start trying to hold meetings in person again, when we're such a small authority. We're not trying to get 39 councillors in that small hall. And if we're asking members of the public to come back to our hall, I think we should be leading from the front, not from the back. Thank you.
So I just want to add to what the clerk said, that I was keen for council to move back into Fairway Hall, or potentially Hertsmere Borough Council's chamber for our meetings. But we decided not to, simply because NALC guidelines stated that we should carry on holding our meetings remotely, and we thought it's prudent to continue following NALC guidelines. Personally, I'm happy to go along with the majority of the council. I'm happy easy. I'm easy either way on it. So yeah, I don't know if anybody else has an opinion they want to make on that. Apart from Councillor Butler, Councillor Butchins that asked to speak.
Right.
Councillor Butchins, followed by
It just
Councillor.
occurs to me that if we need to have the meetings open to the public, then if a lot of members of the public turn up, that could be a big issue.
Yeah, so that's agreed, and then it would have to be streamed live. Councillor Strack. Councillor Strack, you need to unmute. Councillor Strack, can you unmute?
I've done
please?
that. Okay.
Thank you.
My feeling is that at the moment we need to, with our groups, discuss what we might do in the future. The next scheduled meeting of the town council is not till the end of November, so we do have an opportunity to see if the guidelines change, because by then government guidelines may also be changed. It's an ever-changing situation, but I agree that there is no way that we could also have members of the public there, because who do we decide to let in and who do we keep out? Whereas while we're doing these meetings now, members of the public can come in and as panelists or sorry, as attendees. So for my feeling is that we go back to our groups and discuss it and then come back with some answers later on.
Councillor Kaza. Councillor Kaza, would you like to unmute?
Yeah, right. Thank you. See, the government is asking people to go to offices, go to shops, eat out, do as everything as if everything is normal. They're sending children to school, and if we say, look, we're afraid of COVID and we're going to have a Zoom meeting, I mean, it goes contrary to not only what the government is saying, but what we should be telling people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kaza. Are there any other comments? Councillor Vince, followed by Councillor Parnell.
I do agree with Richard. I do think it would be better that we're meeting in person. We are being encouraged to get out and eat out and follow government guidelines in that way. It seems very confusing that we can go out to eat, but we can't go out to meet. But I think we have to bear in mind that some of our members are older and may still be shielding. And you know what, I think we've got to take care of them as well. So, you know, it's a difficult one. I just think we've got to take care of our older members. That's all I wanted to really add.
Thank you, Councillor Vince. Councillor Parnell. Councillor Parnell?
Yes, I've just unmuted. I think I agree that, you know, we've got to go out and we've got to start doing a little bit of have a normal thing to our lives. But if we haven't got the facilities at Fairway Hall to do this, then we need to wait until nearer our next meeting. Like Pat said, we need to have a meeting with our groups and discuss it. I think it's a little silly to go against NALC and against what they're actually saying. They've not just, they've asked other councils and they've seen other authorities, and they're giving advice. Why do we ask them for advice if we don't want to take any notice of them? And I agree with Councillor Vince. You have older members in the council, but we can't accept public in there. So we can't decide you're coming in and you're not. It's the facilities in Fairway Hall are not the same as the borough. So we have to consider that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parnell. Can we move on now to item number 2, item 5.2 of the agenda, the Leeming ACIF Big Local Advisory Panel, 2 ward members. Councillor 1 is Councillor Vince. Do you have anything to report from Leacliff?
Thank you, Simon.
Yes. No, I don't have anything to report either. We move on to Elstree Borough Museum Group. I know Councillor Collins isn't here. Is there anything to report? Councillor Butchins, are you going to make a report? Can you unmute?
space
Councillor
bar.
Butchins.
Right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, I tried pressing the space bar, which worked once and then didn't work. Yes, I have the report, which I have from a volunteers meeting that was held fairly recently. So the new exhibition team meetings had been held and some progress is being made before COVID drew a halt. The title of the next exhibition is Northern Heights and the Lost Line. Tony de Swart was building an 18-foot model of the railway line, and Celia, a student from EUTC, has created a model of Elstree South Station as it would have looked. This will go into display case in the exhibition, and she has won a distinction for her work. Dave, the museum manager, and Ruth, the HBC museums officer, had meetings with Elstree Screen Heritage regarding a display in the foyer of 96, marking the 50th anniversary of the closure of MGM Studios and Paul Welsh's book. Students at EUTC have made a model of the MGM Tower, which will go on display eventually. Obviously, everything has been put on hold. Paul's commemorative book on MGM Studios has sold out and reprints are being made. The AGM was due in May, but has been postponed. The actual report and accounts are nearly ready. They just need putting together. Visitor numbers it's going back a bit. In January, 251. This is the Holby City exhibition. February, 300. And there was 112 people reached for outreach, and reminiscences, there were 12 attendees. Museum current status. Dave and Ruth have had meetings with Peter Windsor, manager of 96, and Jocelyn from the library. Access to the museum continues to be limited. The library is using the top floor as an extension of their office. That's to allow social distancing. No visitors are allowed upstairs, and the lift is currently not being used. Holby exhibition is still in place, but obviously with no visitors. This current status is likely to remain in place for months, possibly into next year. And then we were told, what can we do to allow us to reopen? Well, we're thinking of holding a temporary exhibition in the small hall, using old history panels, subject to obtaining correct PPE for volunteers. Opening hours will be reduced to suit visitor numbers. A grant has been applied for to purchase equipment we may need to enable reopening. Sterling work is being done by Matt and Simon on social media and the website. And week of 5th of October has been suggested for opening the temporary museum. And work has actually, I heard today, started on trying to get something together for that. That's the end of my report. I can email it to you if you wish to help with the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Butchins. Councillor Strack.
Thank you very much for your report, Councillor Butchins. It's excellent to know that there are all these things going on behind the scenes, but I'm sure that you would all like to, for me to give you some really good news, and that is to celebrate Florrie Cowley will be 100 on Sunday. The Town Council will be sending some flowers to her. We gave her an award, a certificate a couple of years ago because she was a founder member of the Historical Society, and which later became the Borehamwood Museum. So we wish her well, and I'm sure we will raise a glass. We have a cake going from DR96 because she's still very much she's a volunteer at the museum. She comes to the DR96, to the Monday Club, and she even runs a club of her own, Friends Club, which is magnificent. And so we wish her well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Strack. Are there any other comments regarding Councillor Butchins' report? So we move on now to Elstree, Borehamwood and Elstree Twin Town Association. Councillor Vince.
Nothing for me this time, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vince. Elstree, Borehamwood and District Community Association. Councillor Parnell.
Yes, I have got a report. 23 customers have returned or are returning soon in September, October. This constitutes about 25% of our regulars. 4 new customers have joined us or are due into September and October. During the latter stages of lockdown, we have completely redecorated the Manor House ground floor. We have installed new kitchens in the Manor House on both floors. Local charity Gratitude have been using Allen Manor free of charge since April. Now that customers are returning, they have been advised that the 24th of September will be the last day they can use the hall. However, we have offered them a short-term option of using part of the car park if they can get a marquee, and I understand this option is being actively considered. We have also hosted 6 blood donor clinics, again free of charge, since April. Fairbrook Medical Centre have booked the hall for a number of flu clinics in September and October. And that ends my report.
Thank you, Councillor Pond. And I'd start to add my thanks to the caretaker, Allen Manor, Michael, who's been so helpful to Gratitude, helping unload the vans and load up and cleaning up afterwards, all free of charge in his own time. So that's 3 cheers to Michael, the caretaker there. Hertsmere Mencap, Councillor Rennie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Most of the activities of the Hertsmere Mencap are still being held virtually. Both activities and advice. Plan is they're planning on to start their normal activity through the Jubilee Club on the 21st of this month in Aberford Park. They are doing the risk assessment now and putting this in place. So by next meeting, I'll be able to update this council on how far they've gone. That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rennie. Any comments regarding Councillor Rennie's report? So we move on now to Communities First. That's Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you're aware, we are no longer invited to their regular meetings. We get invited to their annual meeting at the end of the year. But I'm sure you've all heard and read about the amazing work they've done during this dreadful epidemic. So I know you would like it recorded, our thanks for everything they've done. But I haven't got an actual report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butchins.
Unmute. Yeah, I did receive a communication which said they are having a virtual AGM in the near future. I can't remember the exact date. If anyone's interested, you could always contact them. It's on a Thursday lunchtime in a week or 2, I think. So if anyone is interested.
Thank you, Councillor Butchins. We move on to Aldenham Country Park, Councillor Strack.
Yes. Gosh, I'm just taking my computer next door. I would like to, oh, goodness me. Okay, apologies for that. Elstree and Bournemouth Greenbelt Society are organising a campaign to save Aldenham Reservoir. They're being supported by EBRA, RSGBA, EVPS, Aldenham Country Park Trust Limited, CPRE, Natural England, Historic England, Aldenham Parish Council, Bushy Forum, and a newcomer today are the Stanmore Residents Association. Aldenham Country Park Trust have been collecting evidence from 1954 to 1974 that the path around the reservoir has been used as of right. And it has been fenced off now, and we think that that is illegal, and it will be going to the Planning Inspectorate to be decided. Also, as you are very much aware, the water level has been lowered over time. No evidence to support the need to do this has ever been produced. And we have, the Herts County Council now have deeds which relate to the sale in 1938, which shows that there should be no erection of any fences or any buildings on the site, and that the level of the water should be protected. So we are hoping now Hertfordshire County Council are taking legal advice and will be taking action to ensure that the lease and sale deed are properly adhered to. There's no more news yet because, as everyone would understand, no courts are in session. There are some Nightingale courts, but they're dealing with quite a backlog. So it's just time to wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Strack. Maxwell Park Management Group, Councillor Newmark.
There's been no meeting since we last met due to COVID. However, I can report that whilst the centre currently remains closed, the intention is to partially reopen from the week of 12th of September, and some but not all of the regular community groups will reopen on a strictly limited basis. I think most of them are limiting attendance to between 20 and 30 members. So things should start to get going from the 12th of September, and I shall sort of leave it there and hopefully report back positively at our next meeting once things have reopened.
Thank you very much, Councillor Newmark. First impressions, Councillor Parnell.
Yeah, first impressions. Meeting of the project board. Representatives of each organisation belonging to the First Impressions initiative attended a meeting on the 16th of January. Each member organisation owns action points raised during that meeting, many of which are associated with the railway station. The coronavirus lockdown meant work on most of those action points had to be put on hold. However, some progress has been made and a Zoom meeting of the project board will be held once we know the status of the Passenger Benefit Fund. The Passenger Benefit Fund on the 31st of July 2019, First Impressions submitted a bid for £80,000 of funding for GTR Thames Link. I'm sorry. I thought I'd turned my phone off. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I turned it off. There you are. Anyway, so Elstree and Bournemouth, as a way of saying sorry for the severe disruption caused by the introduction of new timetables for 2018. During our public consultation, local communities requested key improvements. Network Rail told us that canopies over stairs and the bridge are not feasible, and that to cover the gap on platform 1 would cost well over £100,000. We then prepared detailed proposals for more planting on the station forecourt, extra seating, and electronic information kiosk in front of the station. We are still finalising the procurement details for this work and work at other stations. And as soon as this is from Patrick Ladbury, stakeholder manager, and GTR's represented our First Impressions. And we're at other stations, as soon as we have this confirmed and start date, we will let you know and the council know. We will also carry out the additional seating work at the same time as the groundwork takes place. Despite repeated requests, we have still heard nothing about our proposal for the new look on the station. They said they have no reports now for the kiosk. They're being very secretive, apparently, according to Mr. Redman. But he'll continue to harass them, I think. They've done planting at the station. I continue to prune and tend the planters as well as the flower beds. Outdoor displays at the station, posters by Mural were in poor shape after 4 years and have been replaced with more suitable, durable versions. Roads near the station, originally reported on August the 19th, 2019, the central bullseye was finally repainted in June. Crash barriers on Station Road were reported in February and eventually replaced in August. Heritage panels, 3 panels, Alfred Hitchcock at Elstree Studios, and 2 panels on the BBC had started to delaminate. These panels have been refurbished at no cost of First Impression and were put back in the frames as soon as lockdown eased. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Parnell. Any comments regarding Councillor Parnell's report? Okay, so we're going to move on now to item 6 of the agenda. China Uyghurs, to consider motion proposed by Councillor Jane Newmark, seconded by Councillor R. Butler, and the text was considered by a cross section of town councillors. And the motion is, this council is deeply troubled by all examples of persecution, victimization, genocide, and similar injustices. The alleged treatment of the Uyghur Muslim population in China is one recent example. The sight of people being shaven-headed, lined up and boarded onto trains destined for supposed re-education is of grave concern. We are equally concerned about restrictions on press freedom in many regions, as it is a clear indicator of regimes being repressive. The murder, terrorization, victimization, intimidation, and removal of liberties of any minority for whatever reason is abhorrent and strikes at the heart of Article 18 of the UN Declaration on Human Rights. This council believes this must be challenged in the strongest possible terms, and we urge all parties in favour of democracy to oppose such trends using all possible legal means. Do we have any comments regarding this motion proposed by Councillor Newmark, seconded by Councillor Butler? Councillor Newmark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very pleased to be proposing this motion today together with Councillor Butler, but also incredibly importantly with cross-party support. It was really important that we did this using language that everybody was comfortable with on a cross-party basis. I would normally be opposed to the idea of a parish council such as our own wasting time discussing a motion on foreign policy. It's not what we're here for, and it's not our priority. But I think the fact that we have entered into this rather unique sister partnership with province of Hunan behoves us to not remain silent on what is going on elsewhere in China in relation to the treatment of the Uyghur Muslim population in Xinjiang, because what we are seeing there is not, as some people have described it, China's Chechnya moment. As what is going on here is not a process of de-radicalization, not a process of education, not a process of indoctrination. It is a process of eradication of an entire minority people. These are not education camps. They are, by any description, concentration camps. And I think that in light of the relationship that this town council has sought to build up, of mutual respect, trade and cultural exchanges with a province in China, we must not remain silent at what we are seeing on our TV screens and elsewhere. It is in every sense looking like the preparation for and the precursor of a potential genocide. It is certainly an actual abuse of Article 19 of the Declaration of Human Rights. And the language that we agreed on as a consensus is that the Town Council will be calling for this to be challenged in the strongest possible terms and urging all parties in favour of democracy to oppose these trends, obviously using all possible legal means. I think that we had some information, some advice from NAUC that some members suggested we obtain. I think they have advised that it is certainly not ultra vires for us to be debating and approving a motion of this nature. They did issue some advice beyond that, but my view is that NAUC is an excellent body when it comes to the runnings of parish councils, but that they're probably not the right people to turn to for foreign policy advice. And I do hope that once this is passed, we will take advice from the experts, probably at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, as to what it is that we might do to sort of enact the line about challenging what's going on in the strongest possible terms. But today is simply about drawing a line in the sand, making a statement as a council, making statements on a cross-party basis. And I hope that we'll be able to pass this evening on with a unanimous vote.
Sorry, can people hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I seem to have lost connection. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Does anybody have any comments to make in addition to Councillor Newmark's statement?
Councillor Butchins.
Yes, may I just add something that's been revealed today, which I think is pertinent to this subject, in that the opposition leader of a certain country, I'm not going to name a country, has been revealed to have been poisoned with an agent that can only have been produced by a state. And I don't know if you've heard the news, but
Yes.
you may or may not have heard that, but that's the sort of thing that we really need to work to stamp out.
Thank you, Councillor Butchins. Any other comments? Do we have any other comments, colleagues? No. So shall we move on to item number 7 of the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, do you want to take a vote on this motion in accordance with your instructions at the start of the meeting?
So, colleagues, are we going to take a vote on this? Can we start? Sorry, my connection is very poor. I seem to be breaking up.
Well, with your leave, Mr. Mayor, whilst that's resolving itself, I'll run through the list as per your instruction at the start of the meeting. So, as the motion as set out before you in the agenda, members, I'll start with Councillor Butchins. Are you for, against, or abstain?
I'm in favour of the motion.
Councillor Rebecca Challis.
For the motion.
Councillor Richard Butler.
For.
Councillor Alpha Collins is not here. Councillor Victor Eni.
For the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Prabhakar Kaza.
For.
Councillor Sam Lawrence.
For the motion.
Councillor Sandra Parnell.
For the motion.
Councillor Jeremy Newmark.
For.
Councillor Simon Rubner.
For the motion.
Councillor Pat Strack.
Sorry, for the motion.
Councillor Farida Taylor.
For the motion.
And Councillor Michelle Vince.
For.
So thank you, members. Mr. Mayor, that's a unanimous vote of 12 members, not including the member absent. Motion is carried.
I can vote for Alpha.
No.
No,
Proxy.
I'm sorry, Councillor Kazi, one can't vote if one isn't at the meeting. But this is carried unanimously, so
Yeah.
in the first place. So the meeting is carried. The meeting is gone through unanimously. The motion, sorry. Item number 7 on the agenda is Climate Emergency Working Group. To consider recommendation, minute 22 of the GMC meeting held on the 23rd of July 2020. It was resolved at its meeting. It was resolved at its meeting on the 2nd of September 2020. Full council will be asked to consider terms of reference and membership details of a possible working group, that's a subcommittee, to report to the General Management Committee on issues surrounding the climate emergency adopted by Hertsmere Borough Council and Hertfordshire County Council, to include potential interventions that the Town Council might consider in relation to a cycle scheme and possible shared car club. Since the meeting, Councillor Newmark has proposed the following terms of reference and membership. The draft Elstree and Bournemouth Town Council Climate Emergency Working Group on Sustainable Transport, and the remit is to consider and bring forward proposals to Elstree and Bournemouth Town Council to respond to the climate emergency declared by Hertfordshire County Council and Hertsmere Borough Council. To initially focus on proposals that will contribute to the development of sustainable transport initiatives in Elstree and Bournemouth, to include electric car clubs, cycle schemes, shuttle buses, Dala ride schemes and other similar initiatives. To prioritise proposals for genuine partnership initiatives involving borough and county councils, neighbouring parish councils, local businesses and the not-for-profit sector. Where possible, the preference is for the Town Council to act as a convener or catalyst, not as a funder of last resort. to consider, model and propose innovative delivery mechanisms for all initiatives, including arm's length subsidies, partnerships and seed funding. Whilst not the primary purpose of this initiative, to prioritise the development of schemes with the potential to utilise SIL funds in order to provide future revenue income for the Town Council. The membership proposal is for the lead member to be Councillor Newmark, 2 members to be drawn from the Conservative group, 1 member from the Labour group, 1 member of the Elstree and Bournemouth Town Council Youth Council, and invited attendees from Hertfordshire Borough Council, the Portfolio and the Climate Change Officer, Hertfordshire County Council, Elstree Film Studios, Sky Universal Studios, Elstree and BBC Elstree. Officer support will be the Town Clerk or his designate. The meetings would take place initially every 6 weeks, then as required. The reporting schedule would be to report to the GMC and full council within 6 months of the first meeting, and the timescale is to conclude its work within 9 months, after which a new group will be formed to support implementation of any projects agreed by full council. Do we have any comments on this motion? Councillor Parnell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, as of the Chair of GMC, I would like to thank Councillor Newmark for the draft proposals for the Climate Change, Emergency and Sustainable Transport Working Party. As agreed at GMC, Councillor Newmark will be the lead member. These proposals need to be discussed fully to set up the terms of reference for the working group. HBC Climate Change and Action Plan was presented to the Executive on the 8th of July. The proposal will be presented to HBC councillors on September the 16th. We have just received these today and will need to read and digest them. I therefore propose that the terms of reference for the working party are discussed at the next GMC meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other comments? No comments on it? Councillor Newmark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to clarify with Councillor Parnell precisely what she is proposing. Obviously, the Hertfordshire Borough Council Climate Working Group has produced its own report that focuses on a huge variety of different areas, most of which are beyond the scope of the Town Council. The idea of this working group, as you know from our discussions, was simply to ensure that we're best placed to take advantage of any opportunities that may present themselves around implementation in the field of sustainable transport. So, the role of this working group will simply be to sort of work up proposals and suggestions for further discussion at GMC and then the Town Council. So if you're suggesting that we don't agree these terms of reference this evening and send them back to GMC, I think that doesn't really take us much further forward. I think there's no harm in agreeing these terms of reference so that we can begin our own discussions and investigations, and obviously any proposals that emerge from them will come to GMC in due course and subsequently to full council. So, I mean, just to be clear, are you suggesting that we delay approving these, or that we approve them as originally discussed and then refer the findings to GMC? I think there's a distinction there that we need to understand.
Councillor Parnell, followed by Councillor Strack.
Yes, Councillor Newmark, I am. I'm wanting to know what the HBC are going to do before we actually make it our own decisions. I wouldn't like to start duplicating things. So that was my suggestion, that we take it, the terms of reference, to back to GMC.
Thank you. Councillor Strack. Can you unmute me? Thank you. Councillor Strack, could you unmute?
I'm unmuted. Councillor Newmark, the draft proposals came in on the very last day that they could be added to the agenda for the Town Council meeting this evening. Therefore, the GMC never had an opportunity to discuss these proposals, and that's what we need to do. We have, we're not saying that we don't want to go ahead with this. What we're saying is that we need to agree the terms of reference. We didn't have any input or any opportunity to discuss these proposals, these draft proposals that you have presented. We need to look at the membership, we need to look at the invited attendees to ensure that these people would actually be able to come and speak to us. I'm perfectly happy for the members of the GMC to meet soon and to go through this so that we don't have a long time before we come to a decision. But I do think we do need to have discussions outside of this meeting.
Councillor Newmark.
Look, we did have a discussion at GMC, and as a consequence of that, it was suggested that I go away and write up a set of proposals that simply enabled a working group that can do no more than bring forward proposals. And that's precisely what I've done. And as you know, Councillor Parnell, and before I put pen to paper, we sat with Councillor Strack in your garden and discussed precisely the shape that these proposals would take. And you both said that you were very happy and very comfortable with proposals that enabled a group that would simply look at options and decisions, and indeed that group would be best placed to advise GMC and advise full council. I think by suggesting that because HBC are producing their own report, we simply kick this into the long grass, bring it back to GMC, only to come back here to then form a group that's going to investigate it in the context of HBC and then bring it back here, bring it back to GMC and bring it back here again is inefficient. It does feel a little bit like filibustering. It does feel like I was not asked to go and do this in good faith. There's absolutely no decision-making power here at all. It's simply a group of people on a cross-party basis that is going to investigate possibilities and report back for discussion. I do think we need to vote on this evening because it has been tabled. There has been 10 days since the papers went out for people to propose a discussion across the email or convene another meeting informally or formally to do so. There's absolutely nothing contentious in here at all. And I fail to see why it is being kicked into the long grass. I think if we're serious about climate emergency, then I would say we need to take action. But actually, all that I'm proposing here is that we bring together a group of people that can start over a 9-month period to put plans together. This can come to GMC probably 4 times during that 9-month period. There's no way that anybody needs to feel the slightest bit concerned or threatened by this. It is a robustly drafted set of terms and of reference. And, I think that either we're serious about doing something here or we're going to mire this in the bureaucracy, and what was a decent cross-party initiative is going to be lost. And more importantly, we'll lose opportunities as a town council. The Section 106 agreement on the Sky Studios commits them to fund a series of sustainable transport initiatives. Now, either we can be part of that or we won't be part of that. But I think we need to be ahead of the game if we're going to do that, because people are going to start working on this. We should be setting a lead. We haven't even declared a climate emergency yet ourselves as an authority. I suspect we may do soon. But, I went away, drew up these terms of reference in good faith. We did discuss it at length twice, and there is really no reason to send this back to GMC only for it to come back here again. If you have specific concerns or there's something in here that is worrying you, then let's have that discussion now. all the members of GMC are here. We're in a position to take a decision this evening. If there are issues of concern, let's discuss them and let's try and reach a consensus so that we can move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. Councillor Parnell, followed by Councillor Strack.
Councillor Newmark, I have every faith in what you want.
Can I just say, by the way, Councillor Parnell, I did have my hand up and I was pointing it out to the mayor, and it is on the group chat.
Councillor Butler, I can't see you.
Okay, let you.
It is on there. I'm happy to hear Councillor Parnell and Strack, but my hand is up.
Councillor Butler, I'm looking at the chat now and it's not showing on the chat.
No.
I will screenshot it and send you it.
Councillor Butler, will be Councillors Parnell, Strack, followed by Butler. Councillor Parnell.
Okay, as I said, I have every faith in you, Councillor Newmark, really. I would like this to go. I don't think we've discussed we need terms of reference. I think we haven't discussed it fully enough, and it worries me. And I tell you why it worries me, because I think we need to all sit down at a GMC meeting and discuss who we really want to be at the meeting. I don't think it can be done now. I personally think it's got, and I've discussed it with Councillor Strack and our other members, and I don't think we should go back on that. I think we should come, and it's nothing to do with I don't want you to do this project. Thank you very much.
Parnell, Councillor Strack.
I actually didn't have my hand up. I only had my hand up to say that Richard's chat is not showing up on my screen either. So I'm not quite sure where he's.
Not on my screen either.
I can see the blue hand up. I think, Dan, if you perhaps just alert the mayor if you see any blue hands up on the right-hand side. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, okay, so basically what we've got here is clearly stated to consider recommendations minuted on the 22nd GMC meeting of the 23rd of July 2020. This has been to GMC, it has been discussed. I can't see why we as an authority would sit here now and throw this out. After all, we're already seeing protests again in London around climate emergency and so forth. Hertsmere are already reacting. I think we should be reacting. I can clearly see something the town council need to be picking up on straight away. For instance, we're going to be coming at the vouchers later on in the agenda item. If you look at voucher number 7, which is Hertsmere Borough Council Trade Waste Services, we've already pointed out the fact that our trade waste services at Hertsmere, our goods are not recycled. So there are things that we should be looking at the town council and saying what's best for the environment. Should we be sending our recycling to landfill, or should we be looking at another way of actually making sure our products that we use at the town council are recycled to the best of the ability? Simple things like that. That's all this group is going to be doing, is coming up with recommendations, putting them back to council for council to approve, and obviously discussions will happen at GMC. I can't see what the issue is, because at the moment all it will look like is actually the controlling group on the town council don't care about the climate emergency. So that's how it's going to come across, and that's a shame. And I really hope that actually, if you just support this, you can come up with whoever members you want to go on it. It's not going to be a decision-making body, so because the decision will be solely with the full council and GMC. It's not going to go anywhere else. I can't see what the concern is. All it's going to look like, as I repeat again, is it will look like this council, the controlling authority, will not care about climate emergency. That's a shame.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Any other comments on this? Any other comments on this motion?
Can we take a vote on it then? I mean,
Take a vote, yes. Hugh, are you able to organise a vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to be clear, I mean, Councillor Parnell made a proposal there, but it wasn't seconded. So, I mean, it can be resolved by simply voting on the original motion, I think, is the way to do it. If everybody's happy with that.
So that's fine. So
there are no amendments to that.
Councillor Strack.
Proposed.
I don't think
resolved that way, because you either for it or against it.
Councillor Strack.
I don't think a seconder was called for, but I'm very happy to second Councillor Parnell's motion if that is what is needed and required.
I don't think it is needed, Councillor Parnell, because I think you'll have a wish by simply voting on the motion. You're either for it or Councillor Parnell spoke against it. So we do agree the motion. What I would ask members to think about is you might want to agree who those members of the body are. You know, that some names would be helpful, but it may not come to that. So what I'm suggesting, Councillor Butchins wants to come in, but I think the sensible thing to do is to vote on the motion as set out, because either way you'll achieve your objectives.
Sorry, can I just be clear? It's not a motion. This is a resolution.
Councillor Newmark, please. Councillor Butler first. Councillor Butler first. Councillor Butler.
I haven't actually raised my hand this time, which is a miracle. I actually lowered my hand, but thank you for recognising that finally.
So, okay. So, Councillor Newmark.
Yes, and this is a resolution that was clearly minuted as set out in the heading on the agenda at the GMC on the 23rd of July, that full council would consider terms of reference and management details of a possible working group to report to the GMC on issues surrounding the climate emergency, etc., etc. So are we seriously now going to go into a situation where some members of the GMC that sit on full council are actually going to vote against enacting a recommendation that they themselves made at the GMC meeting on the 23rd of July? This is only on the agenda today because we agreed at the GMC that this would come to full council for approval. It's a decision that was already taken at the GMC.
But the second part is a proposal, isn't it, Councillor Newmark? I feel your frustration, but I would say that the part in italics certainly was a resolution of the General Management Committee. I remember it well. And it does say a possible working group, so it doesn't actually specify that working group is de facto in place. But it goes on to say, since that meeting, so after the General Management Committee, you kindly prepared the proposed terms of reference, which I believe you...
Correct, because you asked me to, Hugh, and
right.
As did other members of the GMC.
I
it's
did,
not that I
but
just unilaterally tabled this, to be clear.
I did, and these were put to all members as well as you've pointed out, and members have had an opportunity to peruse these, but you haven't formally voted on the wording of the terms of reference, which is what I believe we were looking at tonight. And as I suggested, if they are agreed, I would suggest also you think about giving me some names of the members you propose for that group, so it can get up and running. But it is also the case that if members, as Councillor Parnell said, are not minded to approve this group tonight, then that would, I believe, be a valid result also. So what I'm proposing you do, I think the easiest way for you to deal with this matter is to vote on the proposal, as you've made here, Councillor Newmark, that the group is set up along the terms of reference that are set out before members in the papers. That's going to resolve the matter this evening. And if it's not agreed, then it can be referred to the General Management Committee again, as proposed by Councillor Parnell.
Thank you, Hugh. Councillor Butchins.
Yeah, it's really a point of order, I think, because I think we're getting a bit confused about what's going on here. The recommendation to full councils to consider the terms of reference and membership details of the possible working group. Now, we haven't actually got proposals for membership in terms of actual names. So that's one of the things we're considering. And I thought one of the issues that we had, and obviously I wasn't party to the original discussions that were held between the leaders of the groups or the people involved, but I thought one of the issues that we had on our side was whether in fact the representatives from outside, for instance, would be willing to join such a meeting. And I think we could probably move forward with this. So we're considering the terms of reference. So we're actually fulfilling the resolution made at GMC. and it's a question of how we move forward. So I will certainly support Councillor Parnell's suggestion that we actually delve into this in much more detail at the next GMC to decide who the members of the group are, and also in the meantime we find out whether the outside bodies and whatever are willing to take part in it. So in fact we are moving forward with it. We're not kicking it out, but we do need more information before we actually set up the meeting, like who's going to be on the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Butchins, for clarifying that the reason for this backtracking is a meeting of the Conservative group that's decided they want to effectively control and veto who sits on this. Thank you very much for that clarification, Councillor Butchins, and I hope that's properly reflected in the minutes.
Councillor Newmark, please in future via the chair. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, you know what? I hear what Clive's saying. It's quite easy to say who our members would be. We would be nominating Councillor Rebecca Challis, obviously with lead member Councillor Jeremy Newmark. When it comes to attendees, that's all we can do is invite people to come along. But there's a lot of work that this emergency working group could be doing in the meantime, whether these attendees from Hertsmere, Hertfordshire County Council and that attend or not. We need to be looking in-house, looking at the town council, what the town council can be doing to actually make change locally. I've already pointed out one example, for instance, our trade waste that we're actually using from Hertsmere, where most of that trade waste is going to landfill. Actually, all of it's going to landfill, our trade waste. So none of it is being recycled. That is one example of what we should be looking at in-house. So we can scrap, if none of these attendees want to attend, we should be looking in-house. The reality is we're inviting these people to attend because then we can be part of what they're also doing. Hertsmere already leading the way with a working group. As I said to you earlier, if we don't vote for this tonight, all it'd be looking like is actually the consoling group, which is the Conservatives, are not in favour of climate emergency working group. That's it. That's how it's going to look to the public. And that's a real shame. I'm actually trying to help you guys here by saying, let's get this on the table now tonight. Let's vote it through. Then the detail of your members, because obviously there must be an issue here of which members you want to join. Maybe you want 3 members to join. Maybe that would stop any in-house fighting in the Conservative group. Maybe you want 4 members. I personally don't care how many members are involved because this is beneficial to us as a town council. In fact, I'd welcome all councillors to be involved in it one way or another. I think this is a really good bit of work. This is leading the way, and we need to actually get behind it, vote for this tonight, and get the ball rolling. Not kick it back to GMC, just to then kick it back to full council and kick it around a bit more, because that's getting us nowhere. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, Councillor Parnell?
Yes, I just would like to say to Councillor Newmark, there's nothing sinister in this, as you're implying. And I think that is wrong of you to do it. We're delighted that you want to chair it and you want to manage it. We need to go back to GMC for terms of reference. That's all I'm saying. Is nothing sinister, like you are implying that we're trying to have some sort of coup about this, and this is not true. You know how we work, you know how I work, and it is, we want terms of reference, and that's how it should be. And that's how I would like it to be as chair as GMC. Nothing more sinister than that, Councillor Newmark. I'm sorry.
Councillor Newmark.
Well, if that's the case, and there is nothing sinister about it, and I accept your assurances in good faith, Councillor Parnell, and the only specific objections that I've heard this evening have related to the headings of membership and invited attendees. So I'm very happy to propose an amendment to my own draft terms of reference to suggest that we refer the headings of membership and invited attendees to the GMC, but we agree this evening all other parts of these terms of reference: the remit, the officer support, the frequency of meetings, the reporting schedule, and the timescale. So if for some reason membership and invited attendees need to be discussed further by the GMC, we can do that, but we can send a signal out to the public and the other proposed partners in this exercise that we're agreeing to the principle this evening, and the GMC is simply going to go back and discuss the details of membership and revert back to council on that. So if the remarks that we've heard from the Conservative group have been in good faith, and the genuine concern is only around membership and invited attendees, which is what Councillor Butchin set out just now, then let's agree the rest of this recommendation. I will withdraw the sections on membership and invited attendees, and we can vote that they are referred back to the GMC for further discussion. So there's a constructive, collaborative proposal that will allow us to make some progress this evening and address the issues that Councillors Strack, Parnell and Butchins have suggested require further discussion at GMC.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. Councillor Strack.
I would be happy with that as a suggestion, because there's no way that we want to not go forward with this. We agreed we would have a working group. We just need a little bit more discussion to ensure that the those areas are properly covered.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Parnell, Councillor Strack rather, are you seconding Councillor Newmark's amended motion then?
Yes, I agree to that as well. That's what I'm saying.
Just looking for a seconder at the moment, and then Mr. Mayor, through you, if there's no further discussion required, you're able to move to a vote now on.
So is Councillor Strack seconding Councillor Newmark's motion?
She said yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the motion is as the original motion, but without the membership section. So we're withdrawing the membership, which
And the invited attendees.
and the invited attendees. So the membership invited attendees are being withdrawn from the motion. We are,
Right.
we are voting for the motion. Less
And referred back to the GMC
Yes.
section.
okay.
Sorry, have you finished, Mr. Mayor? You're cracking up a little bit, so I can't see whether you finished speaking or not.
Yes, I finished speaking. Would you like to start the vote?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So based on those terms, which I think are as clear as crystal now, Councillor Clive Butchins, are you for, against, or abstain?
For.
Thank you. Rebecca Chalice,
Or
thank you. Richard Butler,
For.
Alpha Collins is not here. Councillor Victorini,
For.
Councillor Prabhakar Kaza,
For.
thank you. Sam Lawrence,
For.
Jeremy Newmark, I'm guessing for.
Or
Councillor Pat Strack,
or
Councillor Farida Turner,
Or,
Councillor Michelle Vince,
Or
Councillor Sandra Parnell,
For.
and Councillor Simon Rubner.
For.
Right, so that's unanimously carried as discussed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we move on to item number 8 on the agenda. Those are the community grants. To consider and approve as appropriate community grants referred to full council by the General Management Committee at its meeting on the 23rd of July 2020. So Aldenham Renaissance, £5,000 towards the cost of COVID-19 and the new touchless car park system. The grant was then amended by the GMC to the recommended full amount of £5,000, recognising the need of the group. We agreed on that.
agree.
agree,
Pennywell's riding for disabled centre, cost of COVID-19, 500 was sought. 500 was sought, and it was approved by GMC. Agreed.
Agree.
agreed,
Bournemouth Football Club, Stadium Board, it was previously a budgeted grant. £1,600 was sought. £1,600 was recommended by GMC, with the recommendation to revert to a budgeted grant in 2021-22.
Agreed.
Can I, Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment on this one? I had discussed this with Councillor Strack outside of full council, obviously. I do have one concern. The fact of the matter is we used to do a regular board at the football club. We stopped that because they actually received the money from SIL. My understanding that they would be getting this one-off grant solely because of COVID, to help them with funding. After that, I would actually go against any future funding of any advertisement when we've got a whole stand named after Aylesbury and Bournemouth Town Council when we allocated over £100,000 of our SIL money. I think they've had enough from us, from SIL, and in our advertisement over the years. We advertise through the town crier, which goes through every single door. I don't see why we need more advertisement at a football stadium. I will agree this one to tonight, but I will make the point in future that we have already said in the past that we would not allow any future grant for advertisement boards there because we gave them £100,000 out of SIL. That was already agreed in the past. So I'm in favour of this tonight solely for the COVID. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler.
Mr. Mayor.
Hugh. Sorry.
It's helpful, Mr. Mayor, just to say that, yes, I mean, the General Management Committee has already agreed that this revert to a budgeted grant in 2021-22. However, you know, the General Management Committee and full council, if it so desires, can vote against that at that time if you're not happy about making the grants at that time. You're not committed to making those payments of budgeted grants next year. It's just a way that it's going to appear in the draft accounts and on the papers before members. But yes, the Bournemouth Football Club did actually also request that the grants be considered on a yearly basis. And for those types of grants, we put them on budgeted grants rather than asking them to reapply for community grants each year. It gives the General Management Committee the power to take that decision without reference to full council. So everything you've said to Councillor Butler is absolutely fine insofar as the council isn't committing itself to that £1,600 year on year by reverting to a budgeted grant, and each case can be taken on a case-by-case basis as it's put before members. So I think that's helpful to clarify that.
That is. Thank you, Hugh. I appreciate the clerk's response there, and it's noted for future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hugh, and thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Councillor Parnell, followed by Councillor Vince.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I think that was a budgeted account, to go to a budgeted account was suggested by Councillor Newmark about the football club. I think that's at the last GMC. I believe you suggested it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I made the point that I think actually what we're being asked to do here is really not make a grant. We're being asked to take a paid advertisement. So my view is that this shouldn't be considered a grant at all, and that rather than reverting to a budgeted grant, whether or not we take a paid advertisement in the form of a stadium board should be considered as part of our PR advertising costs. I think it's a bit of a misnomer and looks like a bit of a sham calling this a grant, because that's not what it is. We're paying an amount for which we are receiving some advertising.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. Councillor Vince.
Thank you. Boreham Wood Football Club. So many of our town enjoys Boreham Wood Football Club, and we know they've had really difficult times at the moment, and we don't know what's ahead of them. We don't know what's ahead of any of us yet. And so I respect Richard in what he's saying, Councillor Butler, but I think we have to bear in mind they may come back at a later date and they may need it, and we may have to support it. So I don't think we should be saying no more, because it's a great advert for our town in itself. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Councillor Vince. Are there any other comments regarding the £1,600 going to Bournemouth Football Club?
Just one comment, Mr. Mayor, just to say that at other authorities, and indeed at the previous authority I worked at, for situations like this where there was an ongoing commitment, rather than making budgeted grants, another solution for the town council to consider is a form of service level agreement, which would be a way of supporting a organisation in the mid to long term. So that can be time limited within the agreements, with benefits for both parties set out. So service level agreements are another way of supporting organisations like this, rather than through the grants process, which I can agree, it's in some cases doesn't seem appropriate when compared to other types of grants, the traditional grants of the judo club wanting judo mats and that sort of thing. So that's just another avenue for the town council to consider. I thought I'd throw that in there. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, can I just come back on that? Because I'd just like to say, actually, Hugh, I'd actually be willing to bring that up at next GMC, if that's okay, because that would be an avenue that I'd be willing to talk about and have a discussion over. I've heard what Councillor Vince has said and so forth, but as I said, there is history there on advertisement boards. And when we've got a whole stadium named after us where we've allocated over £100,000, I think we should be looking at a different way of actually putting money towards our local football facility rather than actually having another advertisement board where, as I keep repeating, we're putting a town crier magazine through every door in this town. So how much advertisement do we need? But I would like to view and examine what the clerk's just said. That would be an avenue that I'd quite happily have a discussion at GMC about, and maybe we can find a way forward with that. That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Well, that's an item to be debated at the GMC committee. Councillor Butchins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I mean, in broad terms, I'm in favour of supporting our football club as best we can. I agree that the further discussion is appropriate, but I think probably it's a case of having some further discussions with the football club as well to see how best we can help them in the future, and we can come up with something sensible. Obviously, if it's a budgeted grant or something, it'll go into the budget for next year, but that's a process that's a few months off yet. And in the meantime, we can continue having a dialogue, hopefully, amongst ourselves and with the club, and we can come up with something sensible.
Thank you, Councillor Butchins. And we move on to item number 4 in the Roman
numerals.
Sorry, Bournemouth 2000 Football Club. Towards the cost of goalposts, £768 was sought. £768 was agreed by the General Management Committee.
Recommended. Yeah.
Agree with that?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Vouchers for payment, item number 9.
Just before you move on, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to delay proceedings. You know, I'm keen to make progress, but just so for clarity, because we haven't gone through your formal process of voting, I don't propose to do that on each one. But if you're happy, if members just nod, they're happy that the grant payments as set out in the papers are agreed, including making the full £5,000 payments to Aldenham Renaissance, not the £2,500 that was agreed at the committee meeting. Is that right? Is my understanding correct there?
Agreed.
Agreed on that.
Yes, you're correct.
Yeah, that's agreed. Thank you.
Item number 9, accounts for payment. I'm not going to go through all the accounts for payment. No. But there's been a total amount of £107,225.66. Can we confirm those payments? Item number 6.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you very much. And move on to item 10, the annual return 2019-20. To note that at the time of the agenda, publication of the 2019-20 annual return had not been returned to the town council by the external auditors. I presume that's because of COVID. It's
his, Mr. Mayor, although the town council got its annual return submission into the external auditor in the ordinary time that it would have been required to do so without the delay that was, the extended time that was put on because of COVID. So we did well there. But yes, no, we haven't. And I don't think at this time last year we heard back from the external auditor yet. They have come back with a couple of questions, some clarifications, and we've provided responses to them, very, very basic matters. So yes, we're hoping for an unqualified audit reports back soon.
Thank you very much. Item number 11 on the agenda, calendar of meetings. To consider reverting to 2020 meeting schedule from the 15th of September 2020. The meetings are to be held on Zoom webinars until further guidance from now.
Or until members decide otherwise.
Or until members decide to meet in person. Councillor Turner.
Yes, I think there's an error in them, which is probably my fault. Tuesday, the 6th of October is not a Jewish holiday. So the meeting can begin at 7 o'clock as usual.
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock on the agenda.
I think what
Yes,
Councillor Turner is maybe saying is that the meeting would ordinarily have commenced at 7 o'clock, but because of concerns over a holiday, it was put back to 8 o'clock, and I believe she's now saying it can start at 7 o'clock as originally.
There isn't a Jewish holiday that day.
Was.
No.
We'll change that to 7 o'clock.
Members, are we in agreement that we can revert to the 2020 calendar from the 15th?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, so that's carried forward. Item number 12, Fairway Hall for regular hires and casual use. To consider reopening Fairway Hall for casual and regular booking hire from the 21st of September 2020 with appropriate social distancing and adherence to face covering regulations. Do we have any comments on item number 12? Are we all agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Item number 13, notice of conduct complaint. The proper officer provides notice that Standing Order 14A applies, namely receipt from Hartsmere Borough Council that it was dealing with a code of conduct complaint alleging that a town councillor with voting rights had breached the council's code of conduct.
That's all that's required on that matter, Mr. Chairman.
And then I think, do we have any requests for public participation?
I'm just gonna, Dan, can you go into the attendees? Has anybody got their blue hand up? No?
No, no one's got their hand up.
Then there is no request. No requests for public participation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. So at 20:27, the time is at the moment, I'm going to close the meeting and wish you all a very good evening and look forward to seeing you at some stage in person. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe and well. Live on YouTube.